Yo, 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 it's time. We got Tristana with us. You know what we do. We do those movie reviews. We do those cultural commentaries. We have a lot of fun, and we are bigots while we do it. And we're proud bigots. And we have our chief bigot with us tonight, Tristan Haggard from Primal Edge Health, or I guess now it's just Tristan Haggard, blue checkmark official person, recognized by Silicon Valley as an elite.
Shout out. We're here for another struggle session. Struggling against the evil capitalisms.
Yes, tonight we are full on socialist union workers. I got my union jacket. I got my Doral cigarettes. I got my Coors beer. I got my grease. I just got grease all over me because I was working as a working stiff. And we're going to stick it to the man, Gordon Gekko. Gordon Gekko is the archetype. His very name is actually a reptile, gecko. That's on purpose.
Right.
Because
I don't go to sleep with no whore, and I don't wake up with no whore.
That's right. That's that Martin Sheen righteousness. We got some Martin Sheen righteousness with us tonight. We're going to be setting Bud Fox straight with all of his uppity yuppityness that he's got in the 1980s. Tonight, Tristan said, hey, let's do Wall Street. We were talking about either There Will Be Blood or Wall Street. Both have a similar theme. And I said, let's just do Wall Street because we haven't actually done a big breakdown on my channel of the Oliver Stone classic Wall Street. We've done some other Oliver Stone films. I'm sad to say I've been kind of lagging behind in Oliver Stone film analyses, and that's kind of odd given the fact that he's kind of an archetypal figure for Hollywood conspiracies. He's the granddaddy of Hollywood's conspiracy movies. So here we are. We're gonna pop our Stone card tonight with Tristana as we cover Wall Street, the 1987 classic. Tristan, what are your overall thoughts, first of all, about this film? I've seen it many times. I enjoyed going back and watching it once again today. What's your overall assessment of Oliver Stone's Wall Street?
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before the stream, but I actually think it's one of his better films. I mean, I think the script is really good. I feel like there's a little bit less in some of Oliver Stone's films. There's like too much Oliver Stone in them. I think the cinematography is better than most of his films in this. He doesn't have that like super washed out, crazy filters. He has fantastic writing. Like it's really well written. It's a really well written and well acted film. There's very few moments in it where you're just like laughing because of how corny it is. Like the only moment I remember laughing at is a Bud Fox standing on his balcony. He just bought his new place. He's overlooking the New York skyline. He's like, he does the Zoolander line. He goes, "Who am I?" That's the only corny moment that like really made me laugh out loud. But yeah, I think it's a great. It's a basic level critique of capitalism, neoliberalism, corporate cronyism. And it does kind of give a glimpse into, you mentioned this when we were talking before, and I think one of the more overlooked aspects of the film is like the corporate espionage part of this. You know, it's not a film about intelligence agencies, but there's a lot of overlap. And in your work, you've done so many good explanations, so many great exposés of how the world of transnational corporations intersects with the world of intelligence, honey pots, honey traps, and just generally espionage. So, yeah, what about you? What do you think about this film?
Yeah, exactly. I think that this film was perfect for the time, given that this is at peak Reagan era, yuppie American. Consumerism at its height. The film actually has a lot of that throughout. We'll talk about some of it, but we see the product placement, pretty prevalent in the film. Bud's always with a Pepsi or some sort of corporate product. We see that the very zeitgeist of Wall Street. Again, yuppies trying to make millions of dollars in the most viperous way that they can. It reminds me of there's a classic clip. I was looking before our live stream to try to find Jim Cramer's thing where he's talking about why he loved Wall Street so much and how he fit in so well, because he says it's the most viperous, cutthroat Darwinian. He just keeps he says Darwin like 5 times in this clip about how survival of the fittest it is. It actually mirrors a lot of what Gordon Gekko says at one point. I think Gekko even calls it evolutionary biology. It's, whoever's the survival of the fittest is really the essence of what he's up to when he gives that corporate speech to the shareholders. I think that it fits this time, this period. That is, I was a kid during this time, but I grew up in a military family, so my family was very, super pro Reagan.
Red flag.
My dad was in the Navy. Exactly. That's how I'm a mind controlled super soldier, naval assassin. Exactly. You got me exposed right there. Everybody clip that.
That makes me think of when you remember when Charlie Sheen was saying that he's a Vatican assassin when he was like on that bender.
I was trying
to confirm also Vatican assassin.
Dyer.
Yeah, well, remember Alex went and hung out with Charlie Sheen, and when if you go to Alex's, he's got framed up on the wall that jacket from Red Dawn that Charlie Sheen gave to Alex. So it's like a giant signed Charlie Sheen Red Dawn jacket hanging up. But yeah, that was a wild time. Yeah. Say what?
It's in the office over there?
Yeah, it's like right when you walk in, you'll see it over here to the right. You see the giant Charlie Sheen jacket, this sign. There's a bunch of other memorabilia like that. But yeah, I remember Alex talked about meeting Martin as well. I think they hung out, and because for whatever reason, Martin Sheen, I think, has like he was always pro-life, so he was kind of one of these outliers in Hollywood who tried, I think, to be consistent, with his Catholic beliefs or whatever. So there's always kind of these outliers at times in Hollywood, and Charlie, I think's been somewhat of an outlier, but then he's kind of ended up being pretty wild. And I haven't even heard about Charlie Sheen in years. So I have no idea what ended up happening.
He calmed down a lot. He must have calmed down and gotten sober or something, because you only hear about him when he's kind of flipping out, and doing something outrageous.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think in a way this is kind of Hollywood royalty, right? Martin Sheen is classic Hollywood. You've got Michael Douglas, also Hollywood royalty, being the son of Kirk Douglas. So this is some heavy hitters. This is probably also peak Oliver Stone, like you said. Right after this comes JFK. So two of Oliver Stone's biggest films, kind of within a 4 or 5 year period. So this is definitely peak 1980s.
After Platoon as well. Which,
I forgot about Platoon. Exactly.
What do you think about Platoon? I don't know if I've ever heard your take on it, because Platoon personally, I've only seen it maybe twice. I never liked it. Like, I was really disappointed with Platoon. For some reason, it didn't hit right for me. It was I don't know. There were a lot of things about it that it never sat right with me. Did you like Platoon as a war movie? Because I loved war movies as a kid. Even the corny ones, like I really enjoy a lot of them when I was in
yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not like war. I do not like war movies. So it's really difficult for me to actually. I've watched tons of war movies. I've seen, I think, pretty much every Oliver Stone film. But just because I just don't like war movies, honestly, no, I'm not a huge fan of Platoon. Not to say I don't. I think Charlie Sheen was a killer actor in that. I think he nailed it. I think the film is really well done. I just do not like war movies at all.
What about Thin Red Line?
I think there are, again, there's many of them that I recognize as great films. I do think, what's Martin Sheen's and Marlon
Apocalypse
Now. Apocalypse Now. I think that's a great, wild, Phoenix Program war movie. They all, to me, are very grueling and very, I guess that's what they're supposed to be. They just put me in like a miserable mindset. Just something about war. I don't know. To me, it seems like it's just too traumatic to really enjoy. And I'm not saying that they're bad movies. They're good. It's just difficult for me to enjoy. It's kind of like Westerns. Like, all that is very removed from me. I don't know the Western experience. That's like a grandpa thing, right? Like, grandpas are into Westerns. I don't like any Westerns. I don't even like, I don't even like Wyatt Earp with Val Kilmer. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't like any Westerns. Oh, are you there? I can't hear you. Hold on. Stupid ass Siri came on. Shut up, Siri. Get out of here. Siri, close. Just hold on 1 second. I can't hear you because freaking Siri is on. Okay, there we go. So if it's like Siri is right up.
Yeah,
she's right up in the.
Like Once Upon a Time in the West. If you ever watch Once Upon a Time in the West, because that's a really good film.
You talking about Five Goes West? That's a Jewish.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah, exactly. No, you never seen Once Upon a Time in the West by what's his face, Sergio Leone?
I've seen several of his films. I have not seen that. No.
It might be worth watching because there's kind of a. I think that's the best Western. It's kind of long, but it's got this. I mean, it actually does tie in with crony capitalism, westward expansionism, and the changing landscape of America. It's long and there's a lot of like long, grueling shots, but yeah, Once Upon a Time in the West I think you would actually enjoy that one.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I will watch, important films or Western films that are, considered to be key, crucial things. Good, the bad, the ugly, that kind of stuff. So I've seen quite a few. I just don't like the genre, and I don't like the genre of war movies. But anyway, so let's get back to Wall Street because I did enjoy going back to this film, and in fact, a lot of the last time I'd watched was probably 5 years ago, and I think it was because we might have been planning on doing some of this in Hollywood Decoded Season 2 if that had happened. And we were also, I think, talked about There Will Be Blood as well. But so let's get into it. So we're 1987. We got Charlie Sheen is playing this up and coming. He's middle class, blue collar kid who wants to make it in the world of trading. He wants to be a big shot. He wants to be a top G with a Bugatti. And yet he comes from this middle class, greaseball, sweat neck, mechanic family who is, by the way, a union guy. I didn't actually recall all the union stuff, which is interesting because there's actually some socialist lines that Martin Sheen has later on. I forgot all that.
Said to his dad, Charlie's like, "Well, spare me the workers' union
of the world."
I'd heard it enough growing up.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd forgotten that stuff, but yeah, the main thing that stands out to me, which we'll get into, is the intelligence components of this. It's not explicit, but multiple times throughout the film, what we see Gordon Gekko actually doing, and he's actually a compromising handler in many ways. His interest is more so in terms of getting intel to have the advantage, to be, he says, I only bet on sure shots. I don't bet on things that I'm going to lose. And so it's all about insider trading. It's all about hedging the markets with getting intel, corporate espionage, and even in some cases sabotaging deals and so forth. So that's why it's, I think, a very insightful, beneficial film, is that it gives us a real world picture into the overlap, almost, again, in a very subtle way. It's not explicit, but the overlap between Wall Street and the CIA. And that's very accurate in terms of history because many of the early OSS people were literally out of Wall Street.
What do you think one of the best books on that specific subject is? Other than Sutton's works, is there anything else you'd recommend?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of histories of the OSS that we'll talk about, the relationship between early OSS people and law firms, Sullivan and Cromwell. Probably the most famous of recent note is the Talbot book. The chess player or something like that, David Talbot's book. I have it somewhere. But I've not read that. I've read some of it. I haven't read that book. But this one actually is the most recent relevant one that goes into a lot of depth. The Johann Ratio book talks about that. But that's a little more in the vein of like tragedy and hope. But the Talbot book is a little more like a mainline sort of history approach to... I mean, it's a geopolitical book critiquing, but I think it's The Chess Player. Does anybody remember that book in the chat? Anyway, but that's a good one that kind of...
What do you think about is it Tarpley, his book on George Bush, the biography of George Bush. There's some good stuff in it, but he's a kind of a wacky dude, Tarpley.
Yeah, I mean, he went off the rails. I mean, he's just kind of like, he's like a super Biden guy now, which is just bizarre. I mean, it's just weird.
Wow, that's strange.
It is weird, but yeah, I mean, any of the like even like, you know, Bolshevik Revolution, Wall Street Bolsheviks by Sutton is a good one on this. And by the way, actually, really relevant to the 1980s is Whitney Webb's book, which I'm reading right now. So her volume 2 about Jeff Stein McEffery, actually a big portion of this first half of the book is actually about what all Epstein was involved in the 1980s on Wall Street.
Like so the Promise software and stuff that she gets into.
She gets into that, but actually the history of Jeff Stein is he was a Bear Stearns trader. I mean, he's basically a Bud Fox guy. And then he basically is kind of becoming a Gordon Gekko guy. So there's a lot of parallels.
Leslie Wexner, was that kind of his Gordon Gekko character?
There's a few of them actually. So that there's a couple kind of actually the first mentor to Epstein is William Barr, William Barr's dad, Donald Barr, who was in the OSS. And so the Whitney Webb's thesis is that perhaps Epstein was introduced to the intelligence world through Donald Barr of the OSS. And then there's another character who seems to kind of be a background player, perhaps Rothschild related. That's Robert Maxwell, is another one of the key figures in the background of Jeff Stein. He becomes very close to Adnan Khashoggi, the famous Saudi arms dealer. So there's actually quite a few sort of mentor characters, but definitely as you get into the 80s and 90s, Wexner plays a key role with Jeff Stein McEffery. And then he ends up being kind of in charge of Wexner's money or something like that for many years. And that's, if you notice in the movie, there's a scene where Gordon Gekko signs over right the money to Bud Fox to trade, so that Gordon Gekko doesn't have knowledge of what the trades are. And that's to make Bud Fox into a fall guy.
Exactly. So I mean, they start getting into the sketchy stuff. They start getting into the Gordon Gekko's like a corporate raider, basically. Like he will just he runs into companies, buys them up, guts them, takes the money, takes the whole thing about the pension fund kind of makes you really feel for the blue collar worker, where he's going to gut this airline company and take all this pension money that they've got. They have like an overfunded pension fund or something like that.
This is actually This is actually what one of the things that Epstein was learning too. He was a corporate raider, a corporate vulture in the 1980s. And he was learning this from Maxwell, who did this, for example, in publishing. So Robert Maxwell took over Macmillan Publishing, which was a big billion-dollar publishing thing. He actually tried to take over in the 1980s a place where one of my relatives worked. And so my relative was explaining to me the corporate takeover process that it was a giant publisher in the 1980s that he also tried to acquire in this way. It ended up not being successful with this case. But yes, so basically, Jeff Stein McEffery wasn't just involved in compromising people. He was involved in all kinds of things. In fact, there was 2 Ponzi schemes in the 1980s that his partner went to jail for, and he skated free. So there's all kinds of criminality going on here, even to the point of, and this is actually, I mean, this movie is not about Jeff Stein McEffery, but the similarities are there because we even noticed the overlap with the art world and the auction. And actually in the I can't remember if this is 80s or 90s, but Epstein and Wexner had actually acquired at one point Sotheby's, the auction outlet, and that had a lot to do with Ghislaine, and Ghislaine was then trying to get girls from the art world and the show world into that operation. But you see the overlaps here, because as Bud Fox climbs the ladder, right, he starts getting into the art world, and Daryl Hannah represents, right, this high priced art world, elite snobbery, whatever. But she's actually a honeypot, right? She's basically Gordon Gekko's honey trap for Bud Fox.
Yeah, I like how they used Daryl Hannah too. She's supposed to be this bombshell, most beautiful woman in the world or something, I guess, in 1987. But to me, she always looked like a dude to me. I don't know. She always looks so manly. She has this huge bony face, and she's like She's this like massive, lanky, scrawny woman, and everybody's supposed to be fawning over
Well,
her.
everybody calls her Daryl.
Like
they call her Daryl. They call her Daryl Manna.
Daryl Manna, yeah, straight up. No, I like she is of Hollywood women, she is like the fine art of Hollywood women, right? Where it's supposed to be so expensive, it's supposed to be so refined and so beautiful, but it's really just grotesque and weird and lumpy.
Yeah, I've never really found her attractive. I don't think she's ugly. I think that a lot of times, you know, like you're saying, what people consider exotic, or maybe, especially in the 80s, stuff that was considered exotic in terms of beauty was kind of outlier weird things like this. Like if you had something odd about you, like Grace a jawline, or
she's like her and Grace.
Yeah, Grace Slick. Yeah, I don't find Grace Slick attractive either. But yeah, it's like weird looks. Were
sounds like you're trying to convince yourself of that, Jay.
No. Let's not go there. You've already exposed me once. I admitted I'm a naval super soldier. I can't also admit.
Well, yeah, then you admitted.
I can't also admit my attractions for Daryl Manna.
Daryl Manna and Grace Slick. But also, it was. Well, it's naval super soldier. You and Duncan O'Finian and Aaron McCollum are the
right. I was originally on. Yeah, I was on Project Camel Toe with Carrie Cassidy back in the day. I was just a naval super. Yeah. I was one of the
Jay
first.
Got kicked out of the program.
I got kicked out of the program because I was too into Grace Slick and like buff chick.
Yeah, you were too friendly with that with them dolphins as well. But you also admitted in this stream, Jay, that you have a connection to Jeffrey Epstein and 80s hedge funds and Robert Maxwell type stuff. So we've got a lot of dirt on you now, man. We're just stacking it up.
Yeah, this will be the ultimate expose stream, right? So so let's get back to Wall Street because I'm getting really nervous. I'm getting exposed here. I got to change the subject quick. Let's get back to Wall Street. So he's on the way up.
I like you mentioned the fine art. I really like the fine art motif throughout the film. That's a prominent. It's almost a character.
It's all the CIA garbage art too. Did you notice that? It's all garbage CIA Jackson Pollock Congress for Cultural Freedom art.
Yeah, and it's almost like it almost prefigures the corporate Memphis, kind of corporate art that we see now, and they talk about how expensive the artwork is. I mean, there's several scenes where it's obvious that this art is trash. And Bud Fox, when he first is introduced to this world, he sees this art as trash. He says, like, what a waste of money. I forget the line he gives. And Daryl Hannah kind of rebukes him and is like, well, you don't know anything, you stupid fool.
Exactly.
This is worth millions.
That's a great point. And also, that like, that's a great point because it's really showing the ignorance and naivety of Bud because he doesn't understand that this is tied to the giant money laundering world of elite finance. I mean, who doesn't know nowadays, right, that garbage modern abstract art, like, it's obviously a front. It's a tool for avoiding taxes and money laundering, and everybody kind of knows that nowadays post documentaries on Netflix. But consistently throughout the film we see that Bud Fox is an ignorant middle-class guy figuring out the ways of the world, as Gordon Gekko tells him at the end. I showed you how the world really works, right? And we're on this journey with Bud Fox throughout the movie, figuring out how the world really works. And that's why it's such a revelatory movie, is it really is showing how the world really works. So as Gordon is on his way, as Bud is on his way up, the first thing that made me laugh was that he has he picked this guy as his top G that he wanted to shoot for, and he's got his birthday mixed. He's got his birth date marked down on his weird 1980s calendar, and he wants to go to Gordon Gekko's office to give him a birthday present. It's like weird, kind of almost stalkery level obsession that he has with Gordon Gekko. I just thought that was funny.
I guess it kind of shows how, like Gordon Gekko is kind of he's a very satanic character in the film.
Yes.
He gets Bud, ultimately, is one of his goals among many, is to try to get Bud to betray his own father.
Yes.
Right? to betray. So he kind of initiates this kind of archetypal fall in the life of Bud, but Bud starts out this fall on his own, through his own will, through his own volition, by kind of worshiping Gordon Gekko. Like he's an idol. He's an
That's a great
object of
point.
adoration. Yeah, so I mean, there's this one aspect of the film that I think is real prominent, is Bud's gradual fall into degeneracy, and he's warned by several different characters. He's warned by his own father, to kind of try to keep his soul intact, basically, and not sell out. Hang out, drink beers with the union guys, and talk about the pretty lady's legs. Like that's what we do, and he gives that up. He's also warned by his mentor, who's, I forget the guy's name, but he's got this straight shooter trader that tells him, money will make you do things you don't want to do. He warns him several times that, like, you can sell your soul to get money, but the straight and narrow is slow and steady making money, not looking for those shortcuts, not looking for the one quick wham bam deal. So then he embraces instead Gordon Gekko's methodology, which, you want to go ahead and get into Gekko as a character whose name is, he's a lizard man, basically.
Yeah, he's a lizard man. And I like that you pointed out that he initially is there as a sort of satanic figure to compromise Bud. And I noticed this time watching, he's actually the contrast. He's the dark father contrasted to Martin Sheen, who is the natural good father, and that's why there's this sort of covenant where Bud Fox decides, I'm going to reject my natural father. I'm going to choose this surrogate sort of evil, demonic father figure who I will make my mentor. I will make a covenant with this guy. And I didn't notice this either until this time watching the film, that when Gordon is first starting to realize that, when Bud's starting to realize that Gordon is actually an evil character and that he's aligning himself with illegality, he gets outside the limo and he puts his head back in and he says, all right, I'm with you. And right when he says that, there's music playing in the background, and the lyrics of the song are, I've committed a sin, I've joined myself with evil, or something like that. And I didn't notice that until I had the subtitles on. It actually shows you what the lyrics of the song are. So I thought that was interesting because that's one of the key points. He's already kind of fallen, but that's a key point where he now knows what Gordon Gekko's up to, and he consciously makes the decision, all right, I'm in, right? And then he goes to become a recruiter for getting other people involved in this big sort of insider trading operation. He goes to, James Spader, the Robert California, his lawyer buddy, James Spader. He's like, hey, I need you to give me inside info on court cases. You'll make more money than you could ever make in a day doing this. He goes and sets up a phony cleaning company where Bud does, so he can go into companies and get access to their files. So he's actually doing corporate espionage work now, like finding files to make insider trades. And it just keeps kind of piling up, much like Oliver Stone's Scarface, where we know there's going to be a collapse. We know it's a tragedy, but we keep seeing him, compromise his morals, get further in. But again, he
gets honeypotted along the way, right? So Gekko's character is always, he's reading him. He's very, very snake-like, serpentine. Even his name kind of points to the serpent. But he's reading him, and he's reading his feelings. He's reading his micro expressions, and he's finding ways that he can compromise him every step along the way. And one of the ways he does it is also women, right? He immediately sends him a woman in a limousine. She's like, hey, you want to do a bump? And they do some drugs in the limousine. She compromises him, with a sexual act in the limo. And this is, he gets introduced to this world of hedonism. He gets introduced to this world of, it's a world run by envy, by contempt for your fellow man, and on essentially, well, the main theme of the film is greed. Kind of the surface theme is this greed, the desire to just have everything and more, which Daryl Hannah has a line in the film where he's like, what do you want? They're on the beach and she's like running and she's like, I want world peace and
that's not enough.
Yeah. And even that's not enough. More. I want everything and more.
Yeah, to quote Lisa from The Room, I want it all, right? So if you've seen The Room, that's that stupid line from Lisa. Yeah, Gordon Gekko is weaponizing the vices. You're absolutely right to say he's like a sort of a devil character who has completely perfectly profiled Bud Fox as just this naive mark. And Bud, it's almost like Bud never really notices, even though he should, that he's the tool. He's the one being used. All along, Gordon Gekko is not just playing the game of insider trading. He's playing Bud Fox, and he's doing this because he knows that the big payoff is, they say in the film towards the end, 60 to 70 million in terms of this airline deal. And that's because Gordon Gekko already knows who Bud Fox's dad is. He has the intel, what union his dad's a part of, the Blue Star Airlines that he wants to buy, gut out, pump it up, and dump it, right? So he's got this sort of rug pull, pump and dump scheme that he's got planned. It's planned from the beginning. And Bud should have known that when there's a key line early on where I think they're having dinner, and Gordon Gekko says, "Oh yeah, isn't your dad in the union?" And like, Bud Fox is like, "How do you know my dad is in the airline, oil can tinkerers union or whatever he's part of?" He's like, "Well, I know a lot of things, and that's how this business runs." He's like, it's a sure bet business. It's not a business where we are, honestly trading based on, whoever works the hardest, making the cold calls. Gordon is contrasted to the boomers, even where Bud Fox works, right? So you were talking about those older mentors at the trading firm where the boomers are all like, "Got to make more cold calls, and it's almost like there's kind of truth to this in that Gordon Gekko is right. Like, you're never gonna make it doing cold calls, because this whole trading Wall Street system is not actually based on who works the hardest. It's based on corruption, insider trading, intelligence style operations, compromising people. The very thing, as Tristan said, Gordon Gekko does to Bud Fox the whole time. So all of those Sun Tzu quotes that Gordon keeps throwing at Bud Fox to impress him, really, Bud Fox should have figured out, wait a minute, I'm actually the enemy this whole time that Gordon Gekko is using, but he never figures it out until it's way too late.
Yeah, exactly. That's really well put, man. I mean, that's a great clip, just as a summary of the whole film. I mean, there's also this aspect of, the gradually selling your soul piece by piece, and then there's this hierarchy of compromise, right? Which you mentioned in the blackmail, the honeypotting. Every step along the way, Bud's getting honeypotted into a new level of both power, but with that power, it's always a new level of control over him, right? So like the last one of the last levels that he reaches, right? Actually, it's actually one of the middle levels that he reaches is when he gets power of attorney from Gordon Gekko, right? Like he's courting Gordon Gekko like you would court a woman, right? And it's funny because the women in the film are kind of just, they're set pieces for the most part. The main woman in the film is literally a salesman of set pieces of this modern art stuff, and she herself is the sexual object for both Gordon Gekko and Bud Fox. But there is some sort of a loving relationship developing between Bud and her. But then with that loving relationship, there's also this psychopathy that's kind of budding out of Bud. And Gordon Gekko is there to pick up on that psychopathy and feed it like a seed, and to water it and fertilize it, because he sees kind of a piece of himself in him. And he mentions, you got to get traders that are hungry, that are poor, and have no feelings. Those are the type of people you want working for you. So he's talking about Wall Street, and he's talking about brokers, but he's also talking about the intelligence world, because what he's using Bud for is for gathering corporate intelligence.
Yes.
What he uses this woman, Daryl Hannah's character, for is also corporate intelligence. And he has a conversation with her, and he's you're as beautiful as the day I met you. And she's like, I don't know. He's like, you got some kind of puppy love going on right now. I could sense it on you. I sense your weakness. She's like, I think I'm falling for Bud. And he's like, well, you and me, we're basically the same. We don't fall for the oldest scam in the book, love. it's something that people invent to keep them from jumping out of windows. It's like, so this completely sociopathic, psychopathic is the modern word for this, but very demonic outlook on love, right? A denial of love. You never hear Gordon talking about Gordon Gekko, or any of the characters for that matter, talking about God, right? Where truth and virtue are core elements of the film, but of course, it's a Hollywood movie, so you can't ground those in God. It's got to be some sort of a situational ethics based on, like, oh, you don't want to hurt this person's feelings,
or socialism. It's got to be like a social, it's a quasi socialist sort of ethic in the film, represented by the Martin Sheen character. Yeah, I think you're totally right too. By the way, that I mean, really the closest thing to a God conversation is the end, where Gordon Gekko pictures himself as God and is like, I made you. I gave you everything. I created you. I did, he's speaking as a divine God creator figure to Bud Fox, when Bud has the wire at the very end to get the admission on Gekko. But yeah, I did want to go back a little bit to what you're saying about the usage of vices again. So Gordon Gekko is really a master at human psychology and compromising people. And Tristan and I were talking earlier today about the Bustamante dude. The clips are everywhere. His YouTube videos are suddenly everywhere. And this is really what he talks about in these interviews, where he's like the former CIA operative saying, well, really all I did was master human psychology. I figured out ways to, see what this guy's greatest weakness is, what are his desires, what are his fantasies. And then I play on those things to, get the person to do what I want in the operation or whatever. Or he says, and then what I do in business, Bustamante says, is that I teach people now these techniques in terms of business. Quite literally like what Gordon Gekko does. Gordon Gekko, again, keeps sort of incrementally revealing and telling Bud Fox how his operation works, how Wall Street works. And it's the weaponizing of the vices and the weaponizing of people's weaknesses. And even the individuals who are being played, if they want to be on Gordon Gekko's team, they have to be eventually able to be traders. And I think there's a play on the word here, traders in the sense of trading on Wall Street, but also trader in the sense of being a traitor to any other allegiances that you might have. So he has to be willing to be a traitor to his dad. Like, that's the level of commitment that Gekko expects. And so it is that, like you said, a kind of a deal with the devil, to where, like, you got to be willing to sell out, Martin Sheen for this. And but I have to admit though, it kind of makes sense though, because like it's almost a good deal, right? And that's what's kind of makes it a little difficult, because when they're almost gonna, when Bud Fox is about to sell out his dad, like the money that they could have made from this deal would have actually been enough for Martin Sheen to start a business and actually give a better pay to all of his union buddies.
Yeah.
So that's the funny part.
This contrast between like the socialists, and I'm not saying that like all unions are socialists and therefore bad or anything like that. I think that's kind of a stupid 20th century concept of like, a lot of unions are corrupt, but yeah, there's this dichotomy. There's this kind of tension between the union and the socialist ethic of like, hey, I drink my beers with my buddies and I don't go to bed with no whore. I don't wake up with no whore. But yeah, he could have all his friends and all the people that, that he loves, they could have all made it with the money that could have been gotten. But he's got this idea that like, well, if you just shoot straight in the world, and yeah, that's a funny thing.
Well, it's contrasting the middle class morality to the upper class amorality. And that's actually a theme that you see in a lot of literature, post, I don't know, like Victorian and post-Victorian literature. I mean, this comes up a lot because of when industrialization happens, you get a lot of these kind of critiques in literature and then in movies as well, which it's a valid critique. There's no easy answer to this because of the complexity of the world. But yeah, you have this notion that the middle class is very, very much a prisoner to their overly simplistic morality, their Bible Belt morality. And so they won't engage in risk-taking behavior, which is necessary to make it to the top. And this is really the first thing that tempts Bud Fox, is he thinks, well, all these Wall Street guys, they're big players, they're entrepreneurs. How did they get there? Well, they weren't confined by their middle class morality, and that's why Bud resents his dad, is that he thinks his dad is sort of a scared, won't go out there and go out on a limb and take a risk. He just wants to play it safe and just yuck it up with the other boomers at the bar after the 9 to 5. And there's actually, I think there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, that's kind of true. I'm not saying it's good, but
if you're gonna assume the Darwin, like, it's a film that exists in the framework of a Darwinian culture, right? And it's a very Darwinian film in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And so Gordon Gekko kind of invokes this Darwinian ethos of capitalism and says, this is evolutionary, it's kill or be killed.
Survival of the fittest.
Talking about killing and ripping people's throats out. It calls himself, calling guys who are doing really well terminators, and to do well in his business is to kill things, to destroy, to rip out the throats of your enemies. But it's kind of a Nietzschean moment where Bud Fox he's in the elevator and he and his dad get in a fight, and he's basically tells his dad, "You're blowing it. What are you doing? You're blowing it. Why are you going to throw this away?" He calls his dad jealous. So he takes this almost Nietzschean position of like, well, look, I've gone beyond good and evil. You're shackled by your conceptions of what's right and what's wrong, and your union, bleeding heart, liberal mentality is making you prey to the neoliberal Ubermensch who just want to get in there, privatize the world, get ours, and get out. And he even brings up the concept of like resentment. So like he tells him, "You're jealous of me, and you've always been jealous of me." And he kind of has this. He throws a hissy fit basically in the elevator, but it's a very Nietzschean hissy fit.
No, that's very perceptive. That it's not like Gordon Gekko is not a person without a philosophy. He's actually very philosophical and well educated throughout the film. And there's a lot about Gekko that's also revelatory, right? Like, he's not pictured as a figure who, what am I trying to say? Gordon Gekko is how the world really works. That's the amazing part, is that he's deceptive in that he's playing, Bud Fox, but he's a very, in other ways, honest, forthright character. I mean, from the very beginning, he presents himself as a cutthroat, just kill or be killed, survival of the fittest mentality. He doesn't lie to Bud Fox. He kind of incrementally tells him the truth, and he even drops these sort of psychopathic revelation of the method hints at times. Like you said, I didn't recall until this viewing of the film that he actually says at one point after all this comes out, he says Gordon Gekko says. He starts referencing he says, "Yeah, I changed my mind about the Blue Star deal. I was reading Winnie the Pooh, and I was reading about the honeypot." He's telling him that I just honeypotted you, dummy. He's telling Bud Fox.
He's always telling him this.
Yeah, he constantly tells him.
Interactions he has with him. He's showing him that I have nothing but resentment for other people. I don't want anybody else to get ahead of me.
Yes.
And I run on pure avarice and shameless selfishness. So for Bud to be naive enough to think, and Bud's naivete is shown in one of the best moments that shows his naivete about all this. And this is something real common. Like, you'll see, I mean, I've had conversations like this with close friends of mine who, get involved in certain things with, economically or business that they feel bad about. Like, they know it's not right what they're doing. And they'll say stuff like, well, I just got to do this for now, because then I could set my family up, and then I can do good things with the money. I'll once I get rich, then I can really do the good stuff with the money I've got.
Yeah, Bud says that. Bud says that in the film.
Yep, he says that. He says, well, first you got to become a player.
Yes.
Then you can do good. And I forget what the retort was. I think it was talking to his boomer mentor. I think his boomer mentor was basically like, "Hey, I don't know about that kid. You might lose your soul." So I don't know what he said, but he didn't agree.
The boomer mentor in that scene is the guy that they said at the firm was a loser, that he had put all of his money into some big thing and it went under, and so he lost everything, and so he's still as a boomer age guy near retirement doing cold calls. So he had basically failed, and you're right, he's a warning sign to Bud Fox that, this is the wrong path. And Bud specifically is so filled with hubris that he just blows the guy off, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever. That's because he says I'm kicking ass and taking names, right?" Because the boomer guy's like, "Well, you're on a high right now, but this is gonna go away." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." So he basically rejects every single warning sign throughout the film, and that's why Bud ends up being a tragic figure. But in the end, it ends up being, I think, the best for him, because as his dad says, maybe you needed to go to prison. That's the only way you were gonna, learn the hard way. I don't mean to skip too far to the end, but there's a couple other things that I want to talk about too. Like, for example, the very first scene when he walks into Gordon's office, if you pay attention to what Gordon's saying on the phone, Gordon sees him, and he knows that this is that, weird kind of nerdy kid who keeps popping up everywhere. And he says, "Oh, you've called me like 80 times. By the way, let me finish this phone call." And he says, blah, blah, blah. And he says, "Cook the books." So right away, we've gotten, wait a minute, if Bud had been paying attention, he would have noticed that Gordon Gekko makes a reference to something illegal, right? But he doesn't want to believe that Gordon Gekko is in any way illegal, because it's his hero. It's a guy he's idolized. And in some of the Sammy the Bull interviews, Sammy brings up this point. We've talked about it. He says, well, in the mafia, we know that a lot of people don't want to believe that I'm doing this or that bad thing. And we can actually play on that. It's a trick of human psychology, to where if you don't want to believe that I'm up to something nefarious, I can play on that, and you'll just overlook all the red flags and the evidences that show you that I'm doing something nefarious. That's exactly what Gordon Gekko's up to. And I mean, he masterfully plays Bud Fox the entire time, up until the very end, when I think we're supposed to think that, perhaps Gordon Gekko will have, probably a minor fine of $5 million. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times these kind of guys, like, they get minor fines because they're protected and they're involved at a much higher level. And I think that's what we're supposed to think about Gordon Gekko.
Sure, they know where the bodies are buried. They've got compromised individuals all around them. They've compromised people in high places, or they've got a fall guy. Like, I mean, he did try to set up Bud Fox with the power of attorney. I think that's one of the kind of poorly written parts, is where it's kind of a little bit unbelievable that he would make friends with friends with Bud Fox. Bud Fox has these direct connections with Blue Star Airlines through his father. He also has this direct connection with insider information from his college friend. And instead of having other brokers make the purchases on these stocks, he has Bud Fox go and do it. I mean, you can't, I guess when you're writing a film, like, you got to condense characters and distill them. But yeah, he should have thrown another buffer in between himself and these purchases, and you'd think he would do that. That's like one of the few things that seems kind of outlandish and stupid on Gekko's part.
Yeah, somebody in the point somebody in the chat made a good point.
Dyer do not. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The line, he tells him, "Well, no, Gordon, I can't do that. Wouldn't that be illegal?" And then Gordon Gekko kind of just laughs. He's like, "Yeah, relax, pal. No one's gonna blow the whistle."
He's like, "Yeah, nobody's gonna. We all do this." He's like, "Yeah, come on.
Everyone's doing this. How the world works, dude. We're all doing it. Who cares? It's a big party. Come party with us." And I mean, that's true. I mean, you look at Wall Street and how it functions. Now look at Nancy Pelosi's profile. I mean, like, it was like a meme a few years ago, where if you just find out where Nancy Pelosi's investing, then you that's basically insider trading on your behalf. So, but people like her never take the fall. Why has Nancy Pelosi never been hit with any of this? Oh, well, gee whiz. I wonder. Well, this film is actually showing you that this is how the world works. It runs on compromise,
exactly,
on blackmail, on greed. And now this isn't yeah, there you go. I got to get a copy of Webb's books. You inspired me to purchase a copy of those. But it's and it's not. I mean, the film does portray Gordon Gekko as being a villain. He's portrayed as a villain. But what I find fascinating about the legacy of the movie is that, like, all the finance bros and all the dudes on Wall Street still today, they idolize him. They love that guy. So Michael Douglas has done interviews, and he says people come up to me and thank me for the Gordon Gekko character and says, "You got me into trading." And he's amazed by this. He's like, "This, I can't believe it. I almost regret this character because of what it's done." And Gordon Gekko, the character's legacy is probably largely responsible for like the 2008 crash, because the behavior of the people on Wall Street who idolize this guy, who are, getting coked out of their minds and living this life of just a greed above all things. Greed is good. Greed's going to save us. Right? You mentioned there's no mention of God in the film, but there is mention of a savior. In Gordon Gekko's iconic speech, he says, greed will not only save this company that he really doesn't care about because he's a total psychopath, but greed will save the United States of America, which is basically failing because it's not being greedy enough, I guess, according to Gordon Gekko. So greed is the savior for him. And
yeah, it's weird because a lot of that speech seems kind of directly sort of Fountainhead, Ayn Rand sort of borrowed stuff. Like all of the way that he speaks of greed is very reminiscent of Ayn Rand, which I think would be, essential sort of Wall Street reading here, right? And that again was very popular in the 1980s. That's always been sort of the guiding light of Wall Street and American libertarian laissez-faire so-called economics. But what's weird about that speech, if you notice, he actually just defines greed as just desire. So the weird part was that, for us, greed is a vice where you have an excess of or an aberration of a healthy desire. So really all of the vices are excesses of something that's not necessarily bad. So it's not wrong to have desire. Greed is the sin of excess desire for this or that beyond what is
desire for the wrong thing.
But the way that he speaks of it in the speech, and I wrote it down because I was paying attention. He's like, well, don't you desire to do this? You had to have desires for the future. You have desires for a family. That's just greed. So greed is defined as desire, not as an excess or as a vice. And that's, I think, a very key sort of bait and switch that he does there, is that he's not.
And that's kind of shows like the satanic nature of the character. So he redefines these terms.
Yes.
He redefines natural human, like man has natural eros, which is meant to be directed towards God, towards union with God, towards union with the truth. But he'll twist that desire that man has, that eros that man has, and turns it into, oh, well, you just want stuff. You just want things for you. So love for stuff and love for, power in a worldly sense replaces the love for God and appreciation for the truth and for life.
Well, that's because, like you said, he, as an atheistic Nietzschean materialist, it's convenient and natural, so to speak, for him to define all desire as just a biological Darwinian impulse and ethos to fulfill the self. So every desire is equated to then greed, because there is no such thing as virtue and vice. There's just desire, pain, and pleasure, right? In this Darwinian scheme. There's another element that we haven't mentioned yet, which is important to both Bud and Gordon as characters. And that's the WASP speech and the connected speech that Gordon gives, where he says, well, you notice all of these Ivy League idiots, they don't go anywhere. And he says there's a reason for that. And he says, because I, like you, Bud, I came from the working class. And he says, what I realized coming from the working class is that to really be successful, you have to be dog eat dog. And you have to actually have gone from being a low-level working class dupe to rising to this level to understand what it takes to get there. The Ivy League guys, they all had it given to them on a silver platter, and so they never understood this dog-eat-dog mentality that I've learned. He says the key thing you have to learn here on Wall Street, which, again, classic OSS CIA stuff, that's all WASPy type, Yale, Harvard, East Coast establishment. He says, WASPs, they hate humans and they love animals. He says this is a key thing to understand for a lot of the people that you're going to be interacting with, Bud. And that's because Bud is probably Catholic. We get the impression that, his dad is probably a Catholic working class guy, hence his morality as it pertains to not sleeping with whores, not trying to get money and be cutthroat. So so he's trying to kind of help Bud understand the mentality that's necessary, not just to be in power, but to be this viperous kind of cutthroat person. You actually have to come from the lower class, is what I'm trying to say. Did you catch that? I didn't actually catch that until this viewing, that he brings that up twice in two different conversations with Bud.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I didn't really think of it in that way, but yeah, that's definitely there.
And that would fit too with that 80s attitude of like entrepreneurs and yuppies and that whole ethos of did you notice too, there's a couple interesting things that when Bud first meets some people at that meal that he's having with Gordon, these two older people walk up and Gordon calls that guy the cellular king. So it's like Gordon already knew about the rise of cell phones. And if you notice, there's a couple scenes where Gordon already has tech way ahead of its time. He shows Bud Fox his little tiny 2-inch TV screen that he has. And Bud's like, whoa. And he's like, yeah, this is little TV screens, buddy. This is where you're going. These are the perks you're going to see. And then he later calls.
He's like, my 2-year-old loves this. He's my 2-year-old's obsessed with electronics. And then later on in the movie, you see his kid, and his kid is this little fat goblin demon monster that like chucks his food at the lawyer at the table. He's sitting down with his his lawyer, and this little chubby monster child is just throwing a fit and launches.
That's a great point. That scene is there on purpose to show that like the offspring of Gordon Gekko is just going to be this monstrous little goblin. Exactly. That's there on purpose.
He's so fat too. He's like this grotesquely fat child.
And he's talking about, and he brags about his IQ, right? He's like, this guy's IQ, it's off the charts. You remember that part? He's like, and he's throwing food at the lawyer's face. Yeah, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, I like too and then he later calls Bud on that giant Zach Morris cell phone, right? So he's got a giant, big, fat 1987 cell phone that he calls Bud Fox on. He's already involved in deals for cell phones, right? He knows that cell phones are the future. He talks about the cell phone couple that he's got this deal with. He's making connections with. So,
in the scene with Bud Fox, the scene where Bud Fox meets all of Gordon Gekko's friends, we're at the dinner party. Gordon Gekko introduces him to a few men, and you could see they all look at each other with nothing but hatred, contempt, and what are you doing here? Who are you? Why are you in my? They're looking at each other with nothing but hatred, which kind of shows what that world is fueled on, right? And it goes back to that line about the wasps. They hate men and they love animals.
Yeah, everything about that scene is funny because it's Bud's first introduction to this world that he's so eager to get into. And the funny part is that you can tell as Bud meets everybody and spends time at this party, like everybody sucks at this party. Nobody's interested. The only person he remotely finds interesting is Daryl Hannah, and that's just because he's kind of thinks she's cute. But everybody else is like, he's over there talking to these two women who are talking about bikini waxing and trying to do a lawsuit on somebody. He thinks this conversation is ridiculous. He thinks the artwork.
So the woman, she's talking about bikini wax, and she's like, it turned back the clock on my marriage 10 years. So the idea of that everybody's marriages are falling apart, or they're just sham marriages. Because Gekko's married, right? Doesn't he introduce him to his wife?
Yeah, he's actually married to Mary Sean Young from Blade Runner, and Jamie is actually friends with Mary Sean Young. So I've forgotten Mary Sean Young is in this movie.
So he's married, but then he's also alluding to his continuous sexual relationship with Daryl Hannah's character.
Right. Again, Gordon Gekko is very much a handler, a pimp. I mean, he's like all of these roles in one. And again, he's no morality at all. Very Nietzschean Uberman sort of character, beyond good and evil. And that's his whole ethos, is like, that's how the game is played, right? That's how you become an entrepreneur. That's how you become a player in the game. The other thing too is like cocaine and racquetball. Like that's always like every time, if you want to show how you're like a higher elite class in the 1980s, is like you're doing coke and you're playing racquetball. I just thought that was funny. Like
Gordon doesn't do the coke though. He sends the girl to compromise Bud.
That's actually a good point. Right? He doesn't do. We don't see him.
And Gordon's worried about his health. Remember, he's sitting there testing his blood pressure while he's yelling at people on the phone.
Right.
So Gordon is actually, he's kind of a biohacker. He's like this, he's worried about his health and his blood pressure while shooting his blood pressure up, is in this very contradictory behavior in that scene. And he regiments his life. He regiments his exercise. And in his exercise with in the racquetball game, he's trying to show his dominance, right?
Yes.
His animalistic dominance of Gordon Gekko. I'm sorry, of Bud Fox, Bud Fox is much younger than him. So he has this, does have this obsession with virility, with maintaining his youth, keeps young women around him, feeds off the younger men around him. So it kind of points to, I mean, he's like a precursor to these guys you see now. That dude that's getting his kid's blood and injecting his own kid's blood. What's his name?
Yeah. I know.
Brian, yeah, Brian Johnson or something like that, or Brian Anderson. So he's the precursor biohacker, finance bro, self-absorbed, high stakes, fast lifestyle. But also, I'm so healthy and I'm worried. It's very worldly, right? It's like he's worried about his health so that he can continue to destroy the world and the people around him and be a virile lizard man.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Bret Easton Ellis in American Psycho, right? The Patrick Bateman character is a satirization of Gordon Gekko, exactly, and that's a great point too. That I've forgotten that. This is taking place during a lot of the 1980s. There was a big savings and loans crisis in the 1980s. That's actually mentioned in this book too, which is a lot of Ponzi schemes, a lot of Wall Street scams going on. There was a crash around this time related to the very things that Gordon Gekko's up to, which I think probably played into this plot. I don't remember the details of exactly what year all the SNL crisis was, but it was around this time. That's in the background of the film too. And then you get, like you said, the speech of Gordon Gekko. I thought it was funny too that it's a paper company. So, paper is still important in the 1980s, but maybe Gordon Gekko knew the internet was coming or something, like, because he kind of wants to gut this paper company that he's bought too. So
yeah, true. And the computer is kind of a character.
That's a great point. Exactly. The computer and tech. That's a great point. Computer and tech. You're right. They do play key roles as sort of minor characters in the film. And we do see computers everywhere. So perhaps Gordon knows that actually paper is going to be going away. Everything's going to be going to the net. And so maybe he buys this Dunder Mifflin paper company that he's bought, and he wants to basically pump it and dump it. Same type of thing that he does with the airline that he's bought. He's going to basically pump and dump, rug pull or whatever.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because at the interview, or not the interview, but at the sales pitch where Bud Fox is trying to sell his dad in the union on this corporate takeover of Blue Star Airlines, one of the things that he says
computers, yes,
we're going to use computers, and we're going to make 5 to 10% or 20% more, because we'll be able to carry more cargo, because we'll optimize it using computers, and we'll upgrade all our computer models and all this. So that is implied that he kind of does know that this stuff is coming.
That is a great point. Yeah, you nailed it. I totally missed that was one of the selling points that Bud has to try to get his dad to go along with this the scam deal, is that we're going to update he says the way you run things is trash. We got to have computers doing everything, and he thinks it's going to be really cool and like edgy and futuristic.
And you like how and Gordon Gekko's like nudging Daryl Hannah and looking so lovingly at Bud Fox. It's like the one time he looks approvingly at Bud is when he's pitching this,
it's all a scam. Yeah, it's because and it's funny because Martin Sheen's over there. He's the only one that laughs and is like, no, this guy's a viper, and this is all to destroy it and gut the company and sell it off. And
and he calls out his kid. He's like, my kid here, he worked as a bag handler for 3 years, and what do you think, he knows how to run an airline now? Okay, I'm out of here.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. I thought this was a really smart film. I think you're right. The writing is top notch. I mean, the screenplay is phenomenal. I don't have any critiques of the film or the story at all, except for, I agree with you, there's maybe a couple kind of corny sequences, like, I mean, I understand the sequence of Bud Fox going out on the balcony when he's got it all, and he's just slept with Daryl Hannah, and it's like, he's been fulfilled in every way in terms of the desires, and he looks out over New York and he's like, who am I? Like, that is a little corny. Yeah. I mean, there could have been.
He could have done like the Kubrick stare, right? He could have had him stare vacantly, and then just have the camera pan around his face as his face is kind of dead or something. Maybe, but
I think that would have been better.
That line wasn't used so often by 1987. It's just I always think of the Zoolander.
Well, that's probably
the pool. Who am I?
Zoolander is probably. I think it's probably pulling. It's probably pulling from this because if you remember, there's a similar pattern because when Derek Zoolander goes back to his dad and it's John Voight working in a coal mine. Do you remember that scene? It's actually pretty funny, right? Because he's like, he wants to. I think I got the black lung. Pop. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think Zoolander is pulling from the Bud Fox "Who Am I" scene for sure. But
that's true. And then he even is Sheen in there? No, Sheen's not in Zoolander.
I don't think so.
It was the voice.
But
they had John Voight, and then they had his son too, right? So they had the father-son in Zoolander as well.
Yes, exactly. So let's see, Honey Trap. Got to sell out your family if you want to move up in the structure. Then we get that weird socialist line, right, where Charlie Sheen's like, "Yeah, Dad, I've been hearing this my whole life. Workers of the world unite." So it's almost like Bud Fox has been convinced of Ayn Rand style, Wall Street fountainhead, type stuff. He's combating his dad's, socialist upbringing or quasi-socialist tendencies via the union. In my experience, what I've read about the history of unions is that the initial idea of unions, back at the time of, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, it makes sense to have unions. But what happens is that they eventually get bought off actually by Rockefeller interests, right? So the unions become tools of the power structure that ties heavily into the organized crime structure. The interviews that we've done with Sammy the Bull, I mean, Sammy tells us about how he went and used the union. So this is not a mystery. We know this is what happened. The mafia was totally
used. But it did make sense at the time. And then also seems to make sense in the context of monarchy as well. Like the unions did play an important role in Tsarist Russia in the late 19th century. I'm sorry, the late 19th century. So I think the idea of unions is not inherently bad and socialist, just like the idea of public hospitals or public schools this isn't inherently bad in and of itself.
Right.
I think the problem is that we have this whole system that's built on a foundation of nihilism, of capitalism as basically a religion, which the film does kind of critique it. But yeah, I'm wondering, because you know a lot more about Stone. I think you've watched, closely viewed more of his movies than I have. I haven't seen every Oliver Stone film.
Well, I've done countless. Well, I don't know about countless, but many shows and podcasts with Sean Stone. So I've hung out with Sean.
Yeah, exactly. So you got Oliver Stone at Succession, all apostolic succession through Sean Stone. But what do you like? So do you think? Would you say Oliver Stone at this time when he made this film was socialist? Because I know the Hollywood, in Hollywood, he's kind of he's a commie. He's a commie is what the kind of more boomer con take on Oliver Stone is. Like Bill O'Reilly would probably call him a commie in 2003. But what do you think about his political?
I think that Oliver Stone is probably a lot like anybody from the boomer era of conspiracy. I mean, if you notice anybody from the boomer era of conspiracy, you got two things you can talk about, or three. You can talk about JFK, you can talk about corporate corruption, and then UFOs, right? And those are the boomer era conspiracies. Oliver Stone is interested in the first two, doesn't do the UFO stuff. So I think he's just really a man of his time, just like any boomer. Like my grandparents, for example, on my mom's side, they went their whole life being very well read, educated, and it was really only in the last few years of their life that one of them did a lot of government service. That they basically said something like, "You know what? I kind of doubt the government story on JFK." Right. So it's like people from that period, I think they were really indoctrinated. It was hard for them to go as far as people in our era would because of the internet, because we can learn stuff a lot faster. So, when you listen to interviews with Oliver Stone, like, and I'm in a documentary with, I just forgot, I'm in a documentary with Oliver Stone. Sean Stone made a documentary on Hollywood 4 years ago that's actually pretty good. It's a 2-part RT documentary. And in that documentary, Oliver Stone talks about his time in Vietnam. And he says that, being there, seeing it firsthand is what made me question it. And I think at that time, if you were going to question Vietnam, what happens is that you're basically shuttled into the left dim stuff. That was the only option. There's no other options as to where you're going to find camaraderie and people against the system. It's just going to be like, lib dim, progressive, type stuff. And there just wasn't any conception that there's other possibilities that we could critique the establishment from, right? Because I would agree with a lot of these older school Oliver Stone era boomer critiques. I agree with his corporate critique, and I agree with his JFK stuff in terms of critiquing and doubting the establishment. But it's like, we got to go further than this, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? I think it's just he's locked in the boomer era critique.
Oliver Stone walked so that Jay Dyer could run.
I like that. That's funny. But if you haven't said, people are asking about the documentary. What is that documentary? So I know at one point it was on YouTube. They might have taken it down from YouTube. But let me see real quick if I can find it. Tristan, you want to give us any remaining thoughts? We got to the honeypot stuff. Oh, there's the 1% discussion from Gordon Gekko is also pretty revealing and interesting. He says, look, the 1% owns, like several trillion of the U.S. economy. That's like over 50% of the economy. So he's basically saying that that's who kind of controls things. I think this kind of a statement is what inspires things like Occupy Wall Street, right, in the 2000s, which ends up going off into just idiotic nonsense stuff. But Occupy Wall Street did have a point, which was, hey, why is Wall Street really, behind the housing collapse? It seems there's something going on that's toxic about this. But as always happens, they just fall back into this dumb socialism. So it's like just dialectics. You can either be or an Ayn Rand libertarian, or you can be this sort of dumb, low IQ, Occupy Wall Street socialist. That's your only two options that you ever get in modernity.
Yeah, it's either Ron Paul or Bernie, right? It's like that's the two options you have. But I mean, I guess it's so easy to shuttle people into those. I mean, those are kind of honeypots in and of themselves, right? Like the end game of libertarianism. Libertarianism just enables the revolutionary radicals to continue to attack the foundations of your culture, everything you believe, everything you hold sacred. Obviously, the problems with socialism historically are pretty blatant. So yeah, it's sad that everybody does get shuttled into those, but then it's also, I think we got to remember too, like it's not going to be a political solution, especially at this point, right? I think there's no escape from the problems of the world other than Christ, really. I mean, you're not going to have like a Ayn Randian, free market, the economy that's going to just save the world, or a socialist utopia that's going to distribute everything perfectly and everything will be just so nice, and we'll all live in Burning Man for the rest of eternity and upload ourselves into the Burning Man cloud. That's all pipe dreams. So I like Father Seraphim Rose's quote of, there's Christ is the only exit from this world, economic independence, sexual rapture. You list a few other things. These are all dead ends. That I forget exactly how he says it. He says it much better than I paraphrase it. But yeah, none of these political philosophies are going to get us out of this quagmire. And I think that's kind of like maybe Oliver Stone's film shows the crony capitalists kind of going to jail, right? Gordon Gekko goes to prison. Bud Fox is going to prison. But I don't know. I'd say I'm not saying the film is flawed because of this, because from his perspective, how do you end it any other way? But it's, the the fact that, well, there will be justice for these guys in this world. I think that's kind of ridiculous. You see Nancy Pelosi. There's not going to be justice for Nancy Pelosi in this world. Ultimately, there will be, and she's sadly living a miserable life, and you can see it in her physiognomy. You can see it in these people's faces. And Michael Douglas did a great job at portraying the physiognomy of evil in this film. His face is full of contempt and rage, and sometimes this animalistic, almost fear in his eyes that he portrays really, really powerfully with Gordon Gekko. Because really, it's nothing but misery, the pursuit of pure greed, the pursuit of, just on the opposite end, the pursuit of revolutionary utopia. It results in misery and the creation of misery and your own personal hell, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate all of that big picture breakdown. I did find the documentary. It does still exist. Sean Stone put it on his Rockfin. So it's called Hollywood DC. That's it. I couldn't remember. And it's actually from about 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, he interviews his dad, Greg Palast, who actually had one of Greg Palast's old classic articles pulled up. He interviews Oliver, as you can see there. If you've never seen this documentary, I do recommend it. It's really good. Hollywood DC. Here is the link in the chat there. I'll try to remember to put it in the show description too. Yeah, and he goes into his experiences in Vietnam and how that formed his opinion of all of this. And see, I think here's me. Look at that old school me here, back in the old house with all my carb bloat there that Tristan helped me get rid of. So I still had a lot of that carb bloat back in the day.
I'm a licensed liposuction doctor. That's what we did. We lipoed it out of Jay. Just vacuumed it up.
Yeah, this documentary is on the history of propaganda and the CIA and Hollywood and all that. It's very well done, very revelatory. You guys remember this he's a German, Udo Ulfkolte. Remember this guy? So he was, he went public about 7-8 years ago talking about how all of the German media is controlled still by the CIA, like since post-war it's been controlled. And this dude did not live much longer after this. So Udo Ulfkolte was not much. He passed away soon after this. So if you guys remember that was a big one that dropped back in the day. Anyway, let's we do have a couple super chats here that we'll go to. I want to remind you guys to follow Tristan over on his channel. I've got him linked in the show title at onlyfans.com, I think is that your handle, or is it different now? I forget exactly.
You can find me OnlyFans, Grindr, Tinder.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Chatterbait, all the major platforms.
You're on also Twitch. I think you do a boob stream where you play games live with cleavage or something.
Streams on Twitch,
okay.
Yeah,
nice,
normal stuff.
Excellent. Okay, guys, be sure and follow Tristan over there on all of his outlets. Actually, there. Yeah, thank you for doing the super chat links there, guys. I want to remind you too. Head on over to Rockfin. Show sponsor is Rockfin and is chalk.com, choq.com. You can use the promo code J50 to get 50% off all those great products, especially the Male Vitality and Performance Stack at the front page of chalk.com. We talked about that in our earlier stream. We went into a lot of depth on weird collars. Had some weird collars tonight, which was interesting. But there's that performance stack. I want to remind you guys tonight to head on over to chalk.com. Use the promo code J50, that's JAY50, to get 50% off all those great products. That includes the Tonkat Elite to boost testosterone. That includes the pre-workout Chad mode with Blue Magic. That's why it's blue. It has no toxic artificial ingredients. It's all better than organic over at chalk.com. They actually have peer-reviewed studies that tell you how to boost your testosterone over at, again, choq.com. Look at that right there. That Chad meme is their image right there. Chad meme is their Chad mode. So head on over to chalk.com. Let's see. We got Theocracy. Enjoy your $1. Why is God three persons and not four or five? I've struggled with this question. It's metaphysical in nature, but is there anything that I can read that helps me understand this issue of the necessity of the Trinity? Actually, the best book on this topic is the chapter. Well, actually, it's the chapter on the Trinity in Vladimir Lofsky's book, Mystical Theology of the Eastern Orthodox Church. There's a specific chapter on numerics in the Trinity. And he will actually talk about how the triad surpasses the dyad. It's an argument from the Cappadocians. Maximus also talks about this in some of his more speculative discussions of questions and answers, the ambigua. But yeah, I think that there's also a chapter on this in I. M. Andreev's book on Orthodox theology about the triad. Orthodox Apologetics. Poop Francis, $5. Do you think that the Bitcoin ETF is a play from BlackRock to buy up, manipulate, and then rug pull Bitcoin? I don't see Bitcoin being a rug pull. I don't doubt that they wouldn't like to buy a lot of Bitcoin and manipulate, but I really do genuinely think that they've realized that this is a super awesome store of value. So the best hedge against a completely collapsing fiat Federal Reserve currency isn't gold. It's actually Bitcoin. So I think that's what they realized. I don't doubt that they wouldn't like to manipulate it. I don't know how much they'll be able to. I'm told that, if they put everything they could into it, they might have a little more than Michael Saylor has. So yeah, maybe they could dump it all. I don't see the advantage though for their investors for them to dump it all. I just don't think that makes sense. Now, maybe their play is to buy it up to destroy it because they're just totally sold out New World Order. Maybe that's the plan. But again, I just don't see. I do agree with you, Super Chatter Poop Francis, that Bitcoin is an enemy, but I just don't even know if they're going to be able to destroy it by buying it up and dumping it. I think that would be a really stupid move on their part, because were they to do that, somebody like a Michael Saylor is going to come in and sweep it all up, and that would really undercut. It would just. I just don't see how they're going to do it. But again, I'm not a master trader. I just believe I'm not a Gordon Gekko. I'm a Bud Fox who's able to avoid all of this nonsense by just buying and holding Bitcoin. So I was watching all these traders and all the craziness of the floor, and they're throwing the papers everywhere, and they're smoking their cigarettes and losing their mind, snorting coke on the trading floor of the NYSE. And I'm like, just buy Bitcoin, dude. So that's the easy way out of that. So anyway, we got super chats earlier tonight. I guess the late night crowd doesn't want to give any super chats. That's okay. You are supporting me and Tristan, so if you don't want to support us, that's okay. You don't have to. I thought we'd have a lot of.
It is Jay's. It is Jay's birthday. I don't know if he mentioned this. It is his birthday on Martin Luther King's birthday. We have two of the greatest men of
pretty much
20th century.
Yeah.
Born on the same day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Dyer.
Yes, a.k.a. Gordon Gekko, a.k.a. Bud Fox, a.k.a. Jay Dyer.
That's right.
Exactly. Ty sends $10. It says, "Thank you guys, great show, dynamic duo." I really think, I'm not kidding. Our breakdown of this was really good. I think this was a top notch. I mean, I listened to other movie breakdown streams. I mean, Psyop Cinema Bros, shout out to them, they do good. BLA Cotel do good. But I mean, me, you, Jamie, bro, this is. I mean, if you listen to the other movie,
we tapped the vein. We tapped that gold vein in the middle of
it's gold,
giant quartz rock, and we're just snorting Gordon Gekko size.
I was gonna say, we're doing Gordon Gekko level lines off of Daryl Hannah, right? I mean, that's the level. Our movie analyses are off Gordon Gekko calls.
Jawbone off the side of her giant.
Her jawbone, off of her man lantern.
Her manly ass mandible her huge, freaking Nephilim style, giant, beautiful
dude.
woman,
Dude. When Samson was using a jaw, that was the jawbone Samson was using to kill the Philistines. Was that?
Yeah, her jaw was actually Gilgamesh's his bed. That was his bed.
I like that. You got out there on that one. That was trippy, dude. I like that.
Like, it's getting late. I'm just throwing spackle at the wall at this point. Yeah,
thank you guys.
I always appreciate our streams, man. You guys gotta make sure to support Jay over here. It legit is his birthday. Like, so if you don't super chat him and you hate him, then you want him to have a bad birthday, maybe cry. You won't be invited to his next birthday party. So.
Hold on. So somebody's asking for a Bitcoin address. Yes, I do have a Bitcoin address. I'll give you my wallet address right here in the chat. Let me go over here to wallet. Just give me 1 second. Who knows? We might have like a very generous. I did have somebody sent me $400 in Bitcoin the other day, which I thought was pretty cool. That was very generous. Thank you to whoever the mystery donor was that did that. But yes, if you would like to send. If you'd like to send a Bitcoin, here is my wallet address right here.
Send 10 Bitcoin.
You can send 1,000 if you want. Like, yeah, it's all good, bro. Like, you know,
that wallet, you can actually store all your Bitcoin in that wallet, and it'll just multiply and be automatically put back into your old wallet.
True.
That's exactly how it works.
So here it is in the chat right there. This is Bitcoin wallet address right there, brah. Thank you so much. Again, Tristan, thank you so much. Jack DeAngelis sends $1. You guys are very, very generous tonight with a couple dollar super chatters. Jack DeAngelis says, would you support a corporate revolutionary state? A corporate revolutionary state. I don't know what that means. Is there an orthodox view on corporatism?
Wait, corporate revolutionary state, isn't that just what neoliberalism
is kind of what we have?
Isn't that just capitalism?
That's pretty much what we have. Exactly right. I mean, woke is like the corporate Fortune 100, Fortune 500 philosophy. So that's pretty much what we have.
Yeah. Great Reset, BlackRock. That's kind of what we have now.
Yeah. So I think you're asking what's the solution. There's not really some easy solution to like what the right economic system is. I mean, I think people talk about Sobernost as a concept. Distributism in the West, people talk about that. But again, I mean, I don't think any of these are really. There's not going to be any economic solution. There could be if we had, you know,
so nice.
Yeah.
We can't even. The fact that we're so far along on this kind of nihilistic culture, how will it be turned around? Like, the only way you're going to have a good economic system is if the culture itself changes and kind of we culturally repent from nihilism and embrace the truth, right? So it's like you're not gonna have a global orthodox monarchy that will, a great global monarch that'll keep everything in check. I feel like the next real monarch is going to be, well, not real monarch, but the next powerful monarch will probably be basically like an antichrist figure. If not the Antichrist.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. We could see a revival of orthodoxy. We could see, we could see things getting worse. I don't know. CNelt sends $20 and says, I needed a laugh. I've not laughed in decades. Dude literally hasn't laughed since Gordon Gekko was making those calls. So we're talking decades. We're talking 1987 since this bro laughed. And he's saying that we made him laugh for the first time since 1987.
Dang, we've cracked. So like I said, we cracked into that gold vein in the middle of a giant rock that was his hardened boomer heart.
Yes, thank you so much, Scene LT. Guys, if you would like and share, tell me what I missed in the comments below. If you're watching this tomorrow or in the next few days or in a year from now. You guys are always good at pointing out things we missed. The chat, we have a super high IQ chat, and they always point out really perceptive, insightful stuff. Thank you so much. And again, subscribe to Tristan over on his channel. I enjoyed your recent stream over there with the twin flames. That was a lot of fun. Do you have any streams coming up you want to promote, or what are you planning to talk about?
Yeah. I mean, I'll definitely have at least one more stream this week. Probably either tomorrow. It looks like it's probably gonna have to be tomorrow because we got some family visiting for the next week. So yeah, I'll get on that tomorrow. I don't really have it dialed in yet. No title, but there are streams coming. There are streams coming, and if they're not, your boy Jay over here will DM me and be like, "What's your problem, dude? Like, where's my freaking streams?"
You know what's another movie just like this we forgot to mention is Wolf of Wall Street, like the Jordan Belfort story. It's exactly like, it's sort of like a 2000s era version of Wall Street with more comedic elements to it. But
that sequel, I remember watching the sequel. It didn't stick with me. Nothing really stuck from it. But yeah, Gordon Gekko gets out of prison, and then Shia LaBeouf becomes his.
I never even watched it. I figured it would suck. I think it was a bomb. I don't think it did very well, but yeah, I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I just pretend that the Gordon Gekko universe ends in 1987.
Yeah, Wall Street 2 is not canon, right? So I'm a Wall Street purist, and it's not canonical. So
yeah, it's an apocryphal sequel, just like